Since the UK media built an entire conspiracy that Prince Harry, Meghan Sussex, and their children will be returning to the UK, they are now trying to cook up every possible storyline around it. And mind you, the Sussexes themselves have not announced anything. No official statement, no confirmation, no public message, no announcement saying, yes, we are coming. Nothing. Yet, somehow, the story has already gone from a simple rumor into a full-blown royal production. We have gone from, maybe Harry and Meghan could visit, to discussions about security, accommodation, possible meetings, family arrangements, and now even claims about where they will supposedly stay. It is almost impressive, the level of detail being created around an event that has not been publicly confirmed is something else. It's like watching someone decorate a house before the person renting it has even signed the contract. And now, GB News has entered the conversation. GB News has published a report claiming that Prince Harry and Meghan could stay at a royal family residence in the UK after supposedly reaching an agreement with King Charles. And immediately, the royal commentary world started spinning. The headlines started appearing, the discussions started, the predictions started. Everyone suddenly had something to say about a possible Sussex return. But again, the biggest detail remains the same. Harry and Meghan have not said it. That is the part that many people are noticing, because there is a huge difference between a confirmed announcement and a media report. A confirmed announcement comes directly from the people involved. It comes from their office. It comes from their representatives. It comes from their own words. But what we are seeing right now is a collection of reports, speculation, and claims that are being presented as if the final chapter has already been written. And that raises questions. How did we get from no announcement to detailed stories? How did the conversation move so quickly? Who decided that the public needed to know all these private details before the Sussexes themselves said anything? Because this is where the royal media machine becomes fascinating. The moment Harry and Meghan's names appear, the speculation begins. A tiny possibility becomes a major headline. A headline becomes a debate. A debate becomes a full storyline. And suddenly, everyone is analyzing something that may or may not happen. This has become a familiar pattern. The Sussexes have become one of the biggest subjects in the media, even when they are not actively creating the news. They don't need to release a statement for their names to dominate headlines. Sometimes they simply have to exist. And that's the strange part. The people at the center of the story are often the quietest people in the room, while everyone else is speaking, predicting, analyzing, and guessing. It creates a situation where the media is almost having a conversation about Harry and Meghan without Harry and Meghan. And that's exactly why people are questioning the latest reports. Because if something this significant is happening, why are we not hearing it from them? Why are we hearing about supposed arrangements before an official confirmation? Why are we discussing possible royal residences before Harry and Meghan themselves have explained their plans? These questions are not unreasonable. They're basic questions, the type of questions people should ask when any major story breaks. But with royal coverage, sometimes the excitement moves faster than the facts. And this is not just about one article. This is about the bigger pattern. Because every time there is a possibility of Harry and Meghan returning to the UK, the media creates a huge wave of discussion. There are predictions, there are opinions, there are theories, there are people claiming to know what will happen next. And then everyone waits to see whether reality matches the headlines. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
But the cycle continues. Now, let's talk about the security angle, because that is another major part of this conversation. Whenever Prince Harry's name appears in relation to the UK, security becomes a major topic. This is because Harry has previously raised concerns about security arrangements during visits. So naturally, any discussion about a possible UK trip brings that issue back into the spotlight. But again, there is a difference between discussing a concern and confirming every detail of a future visit. Security is a serious matter. It involves private decisions. It involves safety. It involves family considerations. And when children are involved, the level of privacy becomes even more important. Yet somehow, the media discussion quickly moves into details about what the family may or may not do. That is where some people become uncomfortable. Because there is a difference between public interest and filling in every blank. A possible visit does not automatically mean every detail should be known. A possibility is not a confirmation. A rumor is not an announcement. And a report is not the same thing as hearing directly from the people involved. But the way these stories are presented can sometimes make those lines blurry. A dramatic headline gets attention. A dramatic headline gets clicks. A dramatic headline creates conversation. And once the conversation begins, it can become difficult to separate facts from speculation. This is especially true when it involves the royal family. The public has always been fascinated by royal stories, the history, the traditions, the personalities, the relationships. But in the modern era, the media side of the monarchy has become almost as important as the monarchy itself. The story is not only what happened, the story is how it is reported. The timing, the wording, the angle, the people quoted. Everything shapes how the audience sees it. And with Harry and Meghan, the framing has always been intense. Every decision becomes a debate. Every move becomes a discussion. Every silence becomes suspicious. Imagine living in a world where not replying becomes news. That is the reality of being one of the most watched couples in the world. If they announce something, people analyze it. If they do not announce something, people analyze the silence. The Sussexes have spent years trying to create more control over their lives, and yet the public conversation around them often continues without their participation. That's the irony. They stepped away from a system they felt did not work for them, but leaving did not mean the attention disappeared. If anything, the attention became even louder. Now, supporters of Harry and Meghan will look at the situation and say the media is once again getting ahead of itself. Critics will have their own opinions. That's normal. Public figures will always have people who support them and people who disagree with them. But regardless of anyone's personal view, one principle should remain. Facts should come before assumptions. Because once a story spreads, correcting it later becomes much harder. People remember the headline. They remember the dramatic claim. They remember the first impression. And that's why accuracy matters. The question is not simply whether Harry and Meghan will visit the UK. The bigger question is why the conversation has already reached this level before the people involved confirm the picture. Why is the media creating a detailed picture before the people involved confirm the picture? Why are we talking about where they will stay before they have announced they are going? That is the part that has people questioning the entire situation. Because if Harry and Meghan decide to visit, they can announce it, they can explain it, they can control the information. But until that happens, the public is left with reports, and reports can change, stories can change, headlines can change. The only thing that does not change is the need to separate facts from speculation. So while the media continues building this possible Sussex return storyline, one thing remains obvious. The people supposedly at the center of the story have not actually confirmed the story. Everyone else is talking. Everyone else is predicting. Everyone else is filling the silence. But Harry and Meghan remain quiet. And sometimes that silence says more than all the headlines combined. Because the biggest twist in this entire situation may not be whether the Sussexes return. The biggest twist is that the story about their return was created before they ever announced one. And this is where the situation becomes even more interesting, because the Sussex name itself has become a guaranteed attention generator. The moment Harry and Meghan are mentioned, the headlines almost write themselves. A possible visit becomes a major royal moment. A quiet family decision becomes a national discussion. A private matter becomes public entertainment. It shows how powerful their presence still is, even outside the traditional royal structure. The irony is that a couple who stepped away from the spotlight continues to be one of the brightest lights in the media world, whether they are speaking or not. The most fascinating part is the speed at which these stories develop. One report appears, then suddenly multiple conversations begin around it. People start debating the consequences, the reactions, and the meaning behind every possible detail. But sometimes the foundation of the story is still just a possibility. It creates a strange situation where the reaction becomes bigger than the original information. The conversation becomes the event, even before the event exists. And in the world of royal coverage, that happens more often than people realize. There is also a bigger question about who controls the narrative. For years, Harry and Meghan have spoken about wanting more control over their own lives and their own story. But whenever a rumor begins, the public narrative can quickly move into the hands of commentators and media outlets. Suddenly, people who are not directly involved are explaining what the Sussexes are supposedly doing, thinking, or planning. It creates a situation where the people closest to the story are not always the ones telling it. And perhaps the most revealing thing about this entire situation is the difference between expectation and reality. The media may expect a dramatic royal return storyline, complete with emotional reunions and major moments. But real life is usually much more complicated than a headline. Families, security decisions, and personal choices cannot always fit neatly into a news cycle. Sometimes the biggest story is not what happens next, but how quickly people rush to create a story before they know what is actually happening. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Smiley and have a lovely Friday.